I'm Michelle Murphy, and I'm here with my co-host, Dawn Watson.
Hi, Michelle.
And we are here with the Murphy, Watson and Company program, and we welcome you, and we welcome our company today, Mr. Walker Vreeland, who I am a huge fan of. I just got to see his one-man reading of his play called From Ship to Shape,
That's
which
right.
was brilliant. And I went right up to him after the so-called curtain came down, and I said, would you please come on Dawn and my show? And here he is.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, we're thrilled. Although I said before we came on air, do not sit next to me. He looks too good.
Oh, stop it. Stop it.
And you should see him on the stage. Most people hear him on the radio because he is a huge radio personality. Tell us a little bit about your radio program.
Well, I've been doing my show for 6 years now, and I'm on in the afternoon. I was on in the morning for my first 3 years.
Give your station a plug. What is the name of your station?
WBAZ 102.5 FM. And afternoons are much more conducive for having a life. In the morning, doing a morning show is tough because you're up at 4 o'clock in the morning and then you're in bed at 7 p.m. and you're existing in your own private universe, it seems.
Yes.
And so now that I'm on in the afternoons, I usually get to work at around 11 or 12 and prepare for the day, prepare for that day's show, and then I'm there till I go off the air, and then I can go out and see people and be social.
Yeah.
So it's nice.
And I would imagine, knowing you the little that I do, and I say this is the beginning of a long friendship because I immediately just felt such a simpatico meeting you the other night.
I felt the same way.
It's just this guy is very special, very, very special. And I don't think there are many people like you out there.
Oh, thank you.
So I want to know you better.
Thank you.
But,
Me too. Likewise.
Thank you. And I don't say that easily or readily, but what came across in your play was such a honesty, brilliance. Your portrayal was just so touching and sensitive and funny at times, hilarious, and yet everyone in the audience also didn't have a dry eye by the end of it. It was just a tour de force.
I don't know where was I and how did I miss this? It was at Guildhall, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And so you did a reading. So you wrote the play and then you did a reading of the play. One man show, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's something that I've been working on for several years.
I would think.
And this was just the latest incarnation. I've done, hundreds of rewrites, and this was just another chance to get it up on its feet in front of people and to get some feedback. And that's why your feedback meant so much.
Yeah.
But it really was a special night, and it felt great to do and to get the feedback from so many people. And there were a lot of strangers there, and that always feels good when the audience doesn't owe you anything, but is willing to come along for the ride, the emotional ride. And it convinced me that it's a story that needs to be told, and that people respond to this story, and that I need to take it to the next level.
Boy, do you.
And
Yeah.
make it happen.
You know, I was sitting, unbeknownst to me, across the aisle from your mother, and there was another woman, younger woman, next to her, and they were hanging on every word and beaming, and I thought, well, they're really into it the way I am, but I had never met you before, and I was just as hanging on every word and beaming and crying along with them, and it was a full house. And it was an amazing evening. It was put on by the Naked Stage. That's Josh Pearl and Josh Gladstone.
And they're wonderful. I've done a lot of work with them over the years.
Have you?
I have. And for those of you who don't know what this monologue is all about, it's a story. It's a true story of my experience working as the lead singer on the Norwegian Crown for Norwegian Cruise Lines in my mid-20s, and how it led to a major nervous breakdown, and how I sort of put the pieces back together. It was really a turning point in my life, a paradigm shift, a rite of passage.
Yes, obviously, and part of what I found is universal in your story was being put on the spot and asked to do something that you didn't feel at all prepared for and kind of tricked into. You were suddenly supposed to not only sing, which I imagine you felt very comfortable with, but you were supposed to suddenly dance.
Exactly.
And the way you described realizing I cannot do that.
Right. Well, I've never been a dancer.
Yeah.
And I've always been a singer, naturally, and went to school for it, and was a trained singer and actor. And I was hired as the lead singer on this ship, and I got on board, and they expected me to also be a lead dancer, and I am not. And
Everyone's worst nightmare.
yeah,
It's like the kind of things you actually dream. Like you're on a Broadway stage and you don't know your lines and you don't know how to dance and you're supposed to dance. And that was what you went through.
yes, and also there was no structure to the experience. I mean, I was expecting, having worked as a professional actor, was expecting not equity union rules, but some kind of structure with a stage manager and a rehearsal schedule. And there was none of that.
It was very funny.
They basically handed me 3 shows, 3 scores to 3 shows, and a videotape, and expected me to just learn it and walk into it and do it. And I was not in great shape mentally and emotionally anyway when I took this job. And so it was a catalyst
Right.
for the inevitable. What would have happened anyway? But it happens to be a great story because it's so. I think because it takes place on a cruise ship, or the story begins on a cruise ship. There's something comic about that. Being on a cruise, and lately, I mean, in the news.
Oh, yeah.
Cruise ships are getting a bad rap, and so I think now it just thinking back on it, being stranded, really you felt trapped on this boat, gives the story a little bit of levity, much needed levity, because it gets very intense. It starts fun and light, and I'm optimistic about the experience, and then it takes a turn, and it's a piece that is very it goes to the depths of desperation and despair, and so that cruise ship is necessary.
One
at the
doesn't
beginning.
really think about having a nervous breakdown on a floating carnival.
Exactly.
So that's a funny setup from the beginning.
Exactly.
I know that from what you've said and what Michelle had told me, obviously there's some drama and there are tears and there's all sorts of stuff with this, but I think that is kind of the perfect setup for this story. So that's great. That's funny.
There's that dichotomy. Between,
And then you bring it to Brooklyn, and I love, and maybe you can do a moment, he does this impersonation of his psychiatrist or psychopharmacologist that is just hilarious. And every time he would just go into her accent. Can you do a second of that?
She was, this was a psychiatrist I saw for many years in New York, and she was Polish, and she was very, very gentle, very present and intimate there for you. And Walker, I really think that you need to be on the mood stabilizer. I think an antidepressant has the potential to send you into a manic state. So that's a little taste of
It was
her.
so brilliant and very, very courageous, because so many people, I'm sure, suffer from highs and lows, and particularly out here in the Hamptons, people don't discuss their emotional life very often. It's more their real estate life
Right.
or their party life. But it was so refreshing to be there and hear this brilliant performer. It would be one thing if he had just written it, but then to also perform it and be such a gifted, talented actor and impersonator, you know, the way you did just that, adds a whole other dimension of brilliance to who you are and what you do and what you're capable of doing. And the thing that particularly got me was your honesty. And you will help if this goes on to Broadway or something. Millions of people who are struggling with depression or bipolar or any kind of mood disorder. And, you know, I know that Debbie Reynolds' daughter,
Carrie Fisher, yeah.
I saw her do that on Broadway, her play about her own issues. And it reminded me a little bit of that. Have you read her or seen her?
I'm a big Carrie Fisher fan.
Yeah.
And I've read everything she's ever written, and I've seen her one-woman show. And she was actually a huge inspiration for me, writing this, not only recovering from this breakdown, but writing this piece. Her honesty, her willingness to just be a mess.
Yeah.
Just be herself, the mess that she is, even whether she's in the midst of a crisis or whether she's in the midst of putting herself back together. She just is she has a talent for allowing herself to be completely vulnerable and allowing herself to just be where she is at that moment. In every interview I've heard with her, she actually comes into the second act, which you didn't see the other night at the reading.
Right.
But there's a moment where I do Carrie Fisher on NPR with Terry Gross. And I'm not sure if I can remember the exact dialogue, but she's just so dark, and she talks about it's like a black dog then, when you can't go on any further, and now I can't remember what exactly she says, but
That's very Winston Churchill, the black dog.
yes, that's what it is. She says it's what Winston Churchill called a black dog.
And Abe Lincoln and so many people in history, but God forbid anybody alive.
Right.
And nobody alive has any of these issues. Only people in history.
Of course.
And you and Carrie.
Of
That's
course.
it.
Of course.
That's it. That's
Everybody else is tra-la-la, looking good, feeling good. And yet they'll come on and talk about their terrible former times with drug addiction. But that's all over because I've been in rehab now, and now I'm back.
Right.
You know, it's always about the past, and nobody talks about just having emotional issues, which I imagine almost everybody would have who's living a full life in today's world.
You know, that's a great point, and I never really thought about that. Out here, people don't talk about their weaknesses, their struggles, and I realize it's somewhat of a generalization, but it is true. There's a lot of the life out here, at least on the surface. There is a superficiality to it, and I guess it makes me happy to know that I can bring it down to earth for an hour and a half.
And you're bringing it from a highly successful, functioning person, and you give this great hope that, hey, you can go through this dark time and look at how I am living, and I'm here to tell the story, and there is hope. And I just wanted to say also, when you drive by almost any of the churches, they are overflowing with people in their 12-step programs talking about their dark times, but it doesn't come out of those rooms.
Well, because it's anonymous.
Yes,
and
or should be.
And it should be. And and that's what it should be.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But I think just talking about it, having the conversation is what's so important, because I think it reminds people that they're not alone,
Right.
and that, like you said, there's hope.
Yeah, big hope. And when people feel the darkness of their lives, to realize they're not the only ones that have ever felt that way, and they're going to recover, and however it happens, and it's not a shameful thing. It happens to people who are incredibly deep and thinking and feeling human beings. Like,
Especially, Michelle, because I know that when you're in it, when you're going through it, I mean, I know for myself, I didn't think that there was a way out. I just, when you live a certain way for 25 years, you just assume that that's the way it's going to be. Those are the cards you've been dealt, and that is the life you're going to live in. That's the way it will always be.
yes.
And so when that turned out not to be the case, and my life changed, and I was able to heal
Yes.
and live a fully functioning, happy,
Yes.
healthy life, I was just as surprised as everyone else. And I still, when I think about the fact that I got through what I got through, it's a miracle. It seems like a miracle,
Yes.
because at the time, I thought, this is just the way it's always going to be. It's going to be the way, this is going to be my life when I'm 25, 35, 45, 55. It's never going to change. I'm always going to be just tortured and in my head. Maybe I'm starting to think that it has something to do with aging, maturing. I know that the brain does not fully mature until your mid to late 20s.
That's so true.
And I'm starting to think that maybe that has something to do with it.
Do you think also that your choice of profession, and certainly your choice of location and circumstance, has contributed to your road to healthiness?
Absolutely. And I think it goes hand in hand. My choice to leave my work as an actor and go into radio and move out here, all of those, I think, were contributing factors that helped me a great deal get on the road to recovery. Absolutely.
I think that life as an actor, I mean, everyone always says this, but life as an actor is tough. I mean, you're just filled with rejection day after day after day after day. Now what you do, your primary job, your primary focus that we all know you for is being on the radio. So you're on the radio every day. You have an audience. You have people listening. You're talking to other people or talking about your life. And so I think that that's probably so much more inclusive of the world around you, instead of exclusively floating on a planet doing something where you feel rejected all day, I'm guessing. Don't you think?
Absolutely.
And
it's,
being asked to dance on the spot.
Sure,
I mean,
sure. Well, it's
you're
also
in control much more now.
Yes,
it's your show.
Absolutely. And just to add on to what you've said, Dawn, it's a wonderful platform for me to be myself and be honest and continue the conversation of what it means to be a human being, I suppose.
You see, I think that's what sets you apart. I think you're very unique, and you have a huge opportunity that I was thrilled to see. I mean, I have heard of you as the radio personality. Of course, there are thousands of radio personalities out there, and they can be charming and this and that. But you bring something else that was such a wake-up call and such a surprise. And it's very, very rare. I mean, there are a lot of like Dr. Ruths or all of these people who are coming from a situation of looking down at how can I help you? But you're there saying, I'm here and I'm a real human being, almost like Jack Parr.
And a lot of my material, I would say most of my material, is autobiographical.
Yes.
It's my own life, and so that is it's a very sort of surreal but wonderful way to live and
Very unique.
and communicate and connect with others.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, you were talking earlier, and you brought up Carrie Fisher, who, funnily
Yes.
enough, is in the show. Now, I remember one of the first things I ever read that made me want to go out and write, funnily enough, is Surrender the Pink.
Yes.
And then, of course, Postcards from the Edge, and then, but, she writes almost as if she's writing a diary in these books. Why did you choose? Have you chosen other forms in the past to get to playwriting, or how did you choose this vehicle with which to tell your story? Because you could have written a novel, you could have written something
Thank
that was
God
a
it
memoir.
wasn't
You
just
could
a
have-
novel.
All of these different things. So why did you? Because playwright is kind of an out there way to go. I would think.
It's a great question. I'm still not sure why it manifested the way it did. At the time, the monologue came out of diary entries. So a lot like the form in which Carrie Fisher writes her novels. It came out of journal entries at the time I was living it. So I was writing as a means of survival.
Are you still writing journal entries every day? just
No,
about-
I said this after the monologue that I hope that I don't have to go through something horrendous again in order to,
get the
write
material.
something to write something new. So I was writing it at the time, and it became this one-man show. And I think that came naturally to me because of my background as an actor, because that is it's an instinct for me to telling stories is instinctual. Because because of my I guess the way I identify as an actor still, even though I'm not an actor anymore professionally, I identify sort of archetypally as an actor or storyteller. And I suppose that's why it came into being the way that it did.
Do you know Andrew Solomon's work?
Yes,
The
I
Noonday
love
Demon?
Andrew
Oh,
Solomon.
me
And
too.
that was another inspiration while I was writing this.
And he won or almost won a Pulitzer Prize. Now his work has led to him being an authority on families who have children who have committed atrocious acts.
Yes, or families that have children who are somehow marginalized in
Right.
society.
This is Andrew Solomon, The
Yeah.
Noonday Demon, and he has this other book that just came out
Yes,
as
yes. He's wonderful.
well. He's amazing
Again,
and
hopeful,
brave and hopeful.
Yes, yes.
And came forward with his own struggles. And he's gone on now to adopt tons of children. He just married his lover, and he's having a wonderful life now. And it's recovery, but it's also the bravery of saying, I'm here to light the way, too,
Yes,
and talk
yes.
about feelings,
Yes,
not
yes.
just my success and I'm all that.
Right.
which he
I
could
think
have done.
His new book is called Far from the Tree.
That's it. That's it. The
I'm in the
apples.
middle of it, and
can
I'm always
fall
reading 100 things at the same time.
Me
so
too,
I put
me
that down for the moment. But yes, there were so many. As you mentioned, Carrie Fisher was an inspiration. Andrew Solomon was an inspiration. Spalding Gray has always
Spalding
been a
Gray.
huge inspiration.
Yes.
And, I said this as well on the night of the monologue, that when the East End of Long Island or the Hamptons or Suffolk County knows that you have gone crazy, there's really very little left to lose. It's freeing. You know what I mean? You really do feel like it is it's freeing. I don't know how else to explain it.
Do you really feel, and I know we're going to run out of time, and this is a huge question, but do you feel that you went crazy, or you just felt so much that that was the only way to react as a sane person?
Yeah, you're right.
Because
It could
I
be.
don't see you as having, quote, gone crazy, because going crazy might be like truly, having this sad disease, which has hit someone very close to me, of paranoid schizophrenia, which seems different. You just seemed like a highly creative, intense, sensitive person who was hit with a great deal and feeling so much more than maybe other people who are a little more insulated by their wiring.
But I think that, I think that everyone has those times, and it depends on how you treat that. Is this an experience where I'm going to learn and grow, or is this an experience where I'm in a sink? And you've used this in some way, I think, to better yourself and better the lives of those around you. That's my
Not to
thought.
pathologize it, but I think that medically speaking, I had if you asked my doctors at the time, they would tell you that I was having a manic depressive break, a bipolar break.
Yeah.
And that's what I was treated for.
Right.
But you're right. I am. All of the things that you say are true. I am a creative person. I am extremely sensitive. And I think that contributing factors were the medications that I was prescribed that were just piling up one on top of the other. And,
Your chemistry
in
was
that,
getting...
exactly, it's hard to tell where your true self is when you're so medicated. And I think that's one of the questions that this monologue raises as well, is that the right way to go about it? I don't know, maybe it is, but maybe it isn't. That when you are having an episode like I did, they hospitalize you and they tranquilize you like a horse because it's an acute episode and they're trying to treat that. And then once you leave and you're not inpatient anymore and you're out in the world, then you can adjust to, make your medications more conducive to living an actual life and being a functional adult. But I think that it's an interesting question that I'm not sure I know the answer to, but it is certainly something I think to think about and talk about is the ease at which those in the medical profession, specifically psychiatrists, are diagnosing and prescribing medication. I know at the time I could have gotten whatever I wanted because I was so used to medicating my feelings.
Right.
It was just, talk about instinct. That was an instinct at the time. Oh, I'm having anxiety, take a pill for it. Oh, I'm feeling depressed, take a pill for it. You're constantly measuring and reassessing well, take away this and add a little bit of this, take away this, add a little bit of this. Okay, now how are you feeling? It's so mixed up and hard to tell where is my true self in all of this?
If I may just, and I know we're running out of time.
We're out of time.
We're out of time, but I do want to end on the note that it seems that in our society, it's okay to say, I'm having my afternoon cocktail because I've had such a hard day, and in fact, I'll have 2 or 3 of them, and I'll smoke a few joints because I'm going through this or that. So people are self-medicating all the time. Your choice was to do it through a doctor.
Exactly.
But our society condones this, but one must keep secret if you're doing something medically until we find somebody like you who
people
comes
feel
forward.
like, well, it was prescribed to me, it's okay.
Yeah.
So it's
Can we
not.
have you back? Because there's obviously so much more to talk
I'd
about.
love to. I'd love to come back and talk about my
please
new
do.
interview series.
Please do. I know we didn't even get to that because there was so much to cover.
Interviewwiththeartist.com.
Nice.
Oh.
Terrific.
Thank
Terrific.
you.
Check it out.